So hopefully, since the last tutorial, you guys have played around a bit, creating simple objects, playing around with the viewports. That's great. Now, one thing I want you guys to notice that on the entire left-hand side of the screen, you'll notice the scene or layer manager right here. As you were creating objects, you've probably noticed that once you created a box, maybe multiple boxes, maybe a couple spheres, like that, you'll notice now that in the left-hand side of the screen, in the scene or layer manager, you can call it layer manager right now, you'll notice that the boxes and the spheres actually have been created here. And you're able to access them just by clicking in this layer manager. That makes it easier to select new objects and sort of change them out, hide and unhide and freeze them, because you can right-click right in here and you can choose different options for what you can do to these objects. Now you can freeze them quickly done. I access this menu by right-clicking on the object. So I left-click to select the object that I want, and I right-click to do what I want to that object. So right now I can isolate it, which means not show any other objects, just show it. I can freeze it, and I can hide it. I can select all its children, I can clone it, I can rename it, and I can delete it. And I can change some of the display properties and render properties of that object right here in the scene. A quick, easy way to hide and unhide an object is to simply click it, or click it in the scene manager. And we got my sphere selected here, and I can click this yellow light bulb. Now that means pretty much hide and unhide. If I extend this manager, you can see I can actually freeze objects as well. So I can hide it. And if it was the last object you selected before it was hidden, you'll actually have that blue outline, and as soon as you left click off of it, you'll notice the blue outline disappears. If all your models are in one layer, it'll actually show the layer and an arrow, and you can drop it down, turn it back on, turn it off, turn it on, hide these, hide that, or you can freeze them, which means they'll default turn gray, and you won't be able to access them. So they're completely frozen, and you'll notice that I can only access the one object that is not frozen. So this is a quick way to actually freeze and unfreeze and hide and unhide objects in your scene, so that when you create new models, you can play around the scene and not touch models that you're content with or that are happy in their placement. And you can also hide and unhide if you don't want a model to be seen anymore for any reason, because you're working on multiple, and let's say that one box was so perfect, I want to hide everything else, and just focus on it. And remembering to push the Z key to zoom in on everything in your scene, we can grab the box, and if we push the Z key, we can have that be the center of attention, the center of where our camera is going. And you'll notice that if I push the Z key while everything is active, it zooms in on all the objects that are currently in the scene. So that was a quick overview of kind of the scene manager. Easy enough. Create simple objects. They pop in here. And normally they pop into a default layer. Now, if you're not content with the default layer, which pretty much contains everything in your scene, you can actually create a new layer. To create a new layer, you go up to this icon right here, and it says Create New Layer. As simple as just clicking and then naming it what you want. So we'll name this Boxes. And we're going to only put our boxes in this layer. So right now, I can left click on box 002, and I can drag it into the new layer. So you'll see that as soon as you left click and hold and drag it into the new layer, it actually goes into double boxes. And you can drag that in there, and you can see the icon switches to a double box. There you go. So now our layer called Boxes controls only the boxes. So instead of hiding them or freezing them individually, we can now just access the entire boxes layer and click on the light bulb, and it hides everything in that layer. And same with freezing it. And even the same with some of the options. Now if you want to select everything, like we put a whole bunch of boxes in here and we can't control how many boxes are in there, you can right click and select child nodes, and we'll select everything in that layer. It's a great way to access if you have a layer, if you're making a city and you have a whole bunch of pipes everywhere, you can just right click on the pipes folder and select all the pipes by selecting child nodes. Now with that, you can also make new layers constantly. You can create a new one and call it spheres. Oops, my apologies for that. Let me rename this, call it spheres. This is a layer in a layer right now. There you go. And you can left click and drag off of everything else and make sure that the layer is separate from the others. And we're just gonna drag these spheres in there. Perfect. You'll notice that as I was playing around in the scene manager that the layer has turned blue. That means that's your active layer. So anything I create in this scene will be associated with this layer. If I'm not comfortable making new objects in the spheres layer, I can simply left click on the layers icon and I can switch between what layer I'm working on right now. So right now I'm back to default because I'm about to start working in cylinders, and you'll notice that everything is now being created under the default cylinder layer. So that was a quick explanation about layers. Next time, next video, I'll start getting onto object creation and object modifying. I'll see you guys soon.